was that like a whipped cream pie they had?
I think so. To be honest, I've seen the film once, and it was a very long time ago.
Emily.
I know we have well established that I've been deprived as a child.
So that'll be our next watch.
Yes. She showed me Beetlejuice, and now we're going to watch Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yes.
All right.
Welcome back.
Welcome back to Caitlin and Emily slowly lose their minds over the course of a month.
It's week 5 of the Love Note.
Yeah.
Middle along.
So if you are just joining us, you got lots to catch up on. You don't have to go back, pause and go back right away, but probably should.
Yeah.
This week we're going to be talking about all of the last little bits and bobs to take you from where you are to a finished sweater. And so last we spoke, we talked about the body and different ways that you could update the body of the sweater to fit your desire. So we talked about like short rows to lengthen the back. You can kind of see here. Don't know if you can, but
yeah, it's like a lowered hem.
Yeah, high-low hem, low in the back.
And if you're just joining us, we have some supplemental videos on all of those things.
Yeah, the short row technique and so forth.
Short rows and
we talked about the ribbing. Excuse me, about different ways that you could bind off the body of your sweater. We also talked about picking up for the sleeves. Getting those stitches back on your needles. And so then this week we're going to talk about the sleeves.
Yes. Picking up your provisional cast on also.
Yeah, we're going to answer the puzzle that we started much to a lot of groaning and bemoaning 5 weeks ago. Yeah. Fair enough. And then we'll talk about blocking considerations and so forth. And see if there's any other questions that people have.
Yeah, and hopefully by the end of all of this, you'll have a lovely new sweater.
Yes, or, depending on how you feel about your knitting, a sweater, which is equally important an accomplishment. Because you make one, you can make more.
That's right.
And even if you don't make one, hopefully you've learned a ton while joining us on this journey.
Yeah, so I guess the first thing we were going to talk about is picking up the sleeves.
Yes.
Right? You would do that before you would do the neck?
Yes, and I think that's where I landed last week as well. So sometimes, much like Shakespeare, sometimes the order of things in a pattern can give you insight into what order you should do stuff. Sometimes I completely ignore the order of it, but I think in this case, doing the neckline at the end, while it's not going to make or break your sweater, I think plays into that question of why we even do the provisional cast on to begin with. It seems like Tin Can Knits has put a lot of
it sounds like Tim Can Knits.
Oh. Tim Can Knits.
I know you said Tim Can Knits, but my brain was like Tim Can Knits.
Tim Can Knit. And so can you. So Tin Can Knits, when we were looking at why they have a provisional cast on to begin with, the answer seemed to be that they really wanted to have a well-fit neckline.
So you can kind of like decide on how the rest of the sweater fits and then finish with your neckline.
Exactly. So get it in the position it needs to be, and then if you need to add a few extra rows in there or something to get the neckline to line correctly, that's how you're going to do it. And because with their version with the sort of mohair in it, sort of lofty, billowy kind of fabric, it makes sense that there's not a lot of structure inherent in the sweater. And so how it lies on your shoulders is going to affect how it drapes over the rest of your body. So in this case, they are recommending that you do your sleeves before you do the body so that you can get the full picture before you do that last little clincher. Okay. If you're not sure yet how long a sleeve you want to be, there's no rule that says you can't stop at a certain point, pop it on a lifeline, fit like this part, and then go back and adjust the length of your sleeve. That's not a problem.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. That's the beauty of lifelines, and those barber cords are super handy.
Okay, so sleeves.
Sleeves. Let's talk about sleeves. Yeah. So we do have, we did show a video on picking up your lifeline for your sleeves.
Yes.
Right? So we've already posted that. So we have a couple of different ways that you can do your sleeves, like Emily was saying. And one of the first things that I do when I start knitting my sleeves is I cast on. So you pick up the stitches that are on your waist yarn.
You put them on your needle.
You put them onto your needle, And then you're going to pick up and knit however many your size tells you to. Or not pick up and knit, sorry. Cast on for your... This is the last week. Okay.
Pick up and knit. You
pick
had
up
it
and knit.
right.
Yes, I had it right. Okay.
Yeah.
Doy.
So here's
So
all
you're
my
gonna
stitches
pick up
on the
and knit.
lifeline here, and then these are the stitches that we cast on when we separated
for
the
your
sleeves.
underarm.
Yeah.
This is your underarm here. So you're gonna pick up your waist yarn, and you're going to pick up and knit the number of stitches it tells you to along here, placing your marker wherever it tells you to. What I will often do in a sweater is I will pick up extra, maybe like 1 or 2 extra stitches in that little gappy area between the underarm and the sleeve, top of the sleeve. And then when I finish knitting my first round, I will knit those 2 together to decrease it back to my original number that they want me to have. And that helps me to close up that gap.
Yeah.
So normally when you knit a sweater sleeve, you end up with like a little hole there,
Yes.
which you can also just at the end you can weave in your waist yarn or your tail and close up those holes, and that's another way to do it.
Yeah, and the reason is I think normally you'll find that most sweater patterns will just tell you the same number that you cast on will be the same number that you pick up, but like Caitlin said, there's a little piece of fabric here that's sort of diagonally next to the stitches.
Yeah, like there's always a little space there. So I like to reconcile those pretty quickly because I don't like looking at it. And that's how I do it.
And I don't care. So I will.
Which is so funny because you're so specific about all the other little things that other people wouldn't notice.
Yes.
We all have our things.
Well, I think it's because I have crossed over into the zone of like, I don't hate weaving at ends anymore.
Oh, I don't either.
Oh, okay.
I just don't like to look at the hole.
Oh, okay, fine. That's fine. I don't know what the hole ever did to you, but we can fix it in the moment if we need to.
Yes. Sometimes, this is a little confession, sometimes I'll even weave in the tail as I'm knitting.
Oh, dang. I've done that before.
Yeah. And there's some interesting ways to do. There's all kinds of cool ways to do different things, but
So just be aware that if you do have a hole, it's okay.
Yeah.
You can do what Caitlin does, or you can fix it afterwards. If you can use basically like a darning egg or a darning mushroom, or like I have a bottle of French glitter body lotion that comes in like a ball. And it's the same kind of shape.
Yeah.
And then you just put it in there. And so the idea being that you like give it some surface for the fabric to spread, and then just like basically it's like darning a hole. Except it's not going to run on you.
Yeah. So that's the first thing that I do.
For sleeves.
For sleeves. And then as we were talking about the different ways to knit your sleeve, I believe that the way in the pattern has you knitting the sleeve straight.
Yeah.
So you're not doing any decreases in your sleeve. So whatever you pick up for your beginning of your sleeve, you're going to knit that many stitches for how long?
Whatever the pattern tells you.
Okay.
But you can see there's no shaping. Like it doesn't decrease. Like that's a fitted sleeve, and that is more of a straight sleeve. Yeah.
Right. So you're gonna knit it straight. And then
do some decreases.
Yeah, I think there's some rapid decreasing. So it'll, instead of just like 1 or 2, it'll be like a series of decreases to kind of cinch in the end of that sleeve to be more like a blousey kind of a sleeve.
Which again works into that sort of billowy fabric that the pattern originally calls for. And even though this is not as billowy a yarn, it still looks lovely and has some movement and some drape to it. Yeah.
The other thing that I've also done, depending on what season you're knitting your sweater for or the look that you want to have, I have knit the love note to about here, and it's given me a nice like short sleeve. Yes. In like I think the one I have is like a cotton cotton wool. So it's not super heavy like cotton, but it's lighter than a wool sweater. And then I've knit the ranunculus to have a long sleeve, and I've tapered it. And I've made a long ribbed cuff.
Yeah.
And that allows me to fold up the cuff so that I'm not having to scrunch my sleeves up. I can just fold it over once and they're out of my way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this pattern, I think the sleeve sort of ends in this part of the arm, depending on the length people knit. So yeah, you could knit this conceivably as much or as little as you want to. For the short sleeve that Caitlin was mentioning, I probably wouldn't bother with the rapid decreasing.
Yeah, no.
But for here or for here, yeah, you absolutely could. You could taper, like Caitlin said. So what that would be is find the part where your stitch marker is going, which is going to mark the underarm or the center of the underarm. And so like every inch or so, you're going to decrease one stitch on either side. And usually people will mirror that. So you'll see like a knit two together and then a slip slip knit or vice versa.
Yeah, and then those increases or those decreases will kind of flirt together like that.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it's the underside of the arm, so who it's going to know? Unless you do a lot of rapid high fives to a bunch of knitters, most people probably won't notice.
Yes, and you will do that when
you finish your sweater. That's what we need. We need a love note party where everyone wears their love note and it just goes around high-fiving.
Yes.
And then the other thing that I was thinking about for sleeves, if you're doing something that's really billowy and you want to take this kind of a sharp angle ballooniness to an extreme, you could do like a balloony bishopy sleeve kind of a thing. So have it almost grow even more before it decreases.
Ooh.
Sort of a bell kind of a shape. And the only reason why I thought about that was because I'm currently knitting the La Pouf cardigan by Hedgehog Fibers.
Yes.
And it has, it is a free pattern and it has that kind of a sleeve. So you could totally incorporate those free directions into your sweater. If that's what you want to do. If you want like all of the balloony.
Yes.
Like we talked about that.
That would be really cute.
Yeah, we talked about like when we were talking about the body, but whether or not it would sort of billow out a little bit. And same thing with the sleeves, just be like a wisp.
Is that the class you're doing?
That's the class we're doing. That's
okay. Are there
in
any
2 weeks?
Are there any spots left in the class, or is it sold out?
There might be. I don't remember. I know I have enough to run it, but I don't remember if it's filled.
Yeah. So yeah, if you want to knit a sweater with Emily,
again,
check out that class.
Right. So sleeves. Questions about sleeves before we move on. I think the binding off is going to be very similar to the body of the sweater. You want to make sure that it's not too tight. So I think in this version, I did what I did for the body, which was to go up to the larger needle size. So I did my ribbing on the 4.5, and then I went up onto the 6 again and just bound off in pattern really loosely. So knit one, purl one, pull one over the other.
And that's a twisted rib.
This is again a twisted rib because it's party.
You want
but
to
you
show
don't have
that?
to. Sure.
Well, sir.
Yeah.
So the twisted rib again has more pronounced kind of ribs going up.
Yeah, it does not have as much stretch, like I said before. So if you want to do that kind of sweater with the long sleeve and like the thick rib or something, I would probably go for a 2x2 rib. Just because that's going to have good bounce back.
Yeah.
If you slide it up and bring it back down again, you'll have.
I think I use 1x1.
That could also work.
Yeah.
But don't twist. The twist is not going to bounce back as much.
No. Yeah, that's what I've done for a few sweaters, and I really like it.
It's very cozy.
It's very cozy. So, like, I would, it's nice when you can make like a short sleeve or a long sleeve. You can make the sweater into really anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do summer versions, like my summer ranunculus. Okay, so sleeves. I think that's about all we have on sleeves.
Yeah, I think so.
If you find yourself wanting to claw your face off because, oh my god, these sleeves never end, it's called Sleeve Island, and you're not alone.
Yes.
Most people go a little bit cabin fevery with their sleeves.
I'm on Sleeve Island right now with my ranunculus.
It's
all right.
I will say that some people will do them 2 at a time. So like once you have them established, then pop them on 2 at a time and then they,
Yes.
you know, you don't end up with second sleeve syndrome, where you're like, no, I meant to walk around with one arm not done.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Have you done that?
No.
Okay.
No, but I admire people who do.
Yeah. I mean, I've done that with socks. I don't remember if I've ever done it with sleeves, but I think I've been intrigued by it because it does seem like a good way to avoid that second sleeve. But there's definitely there's the yarn management of 2 at a time. Like even with socks, there's a yarn management thing where you don't want your yarn balls to twist. But then there's also like the body of the sweater is flip-flopping around.
I already struggle with sleeves. I would just tuck it in a bag.
But some people swear by it.
Yep.
Yeah. So Tanya, I always do magic loop. I prefer magic loop. The only time I use DPNs is if all of my long needles are on other projects.
The opposite.
I love doing magic loop. It to me it just seems like, you know, you can knit something this big or you can knit something like this big on one set of needles. I love that.
Meanwhile, the only time I've ever knit a sleeve on magic loop was because I packed the wrong 16-inch circular and I was at the cottage and my knitting needles were 2 hours away, so I had to suck it up.
To do 2 at a time on magic loop. Yeah.
I've seen people do it.
Yep.
I don't remember who.
I mean, I don't know how else you would do 2 at a time unless you were on magic loop.
Yeah, it would be really, really painful trying to do it on 2 different circular needles.
Yeah.
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 No, don't. Just don't.
Just
one at a time or 2 at a time on a magic loop together.
Yeah. And if you are interested in trying 2 at a time just as a concept, I think Laura does a class on that.
She does 2 at a time socks.
2 at a time socks. So it's a worsted weight sock pattern.
And she teaches it as an advanced beginner. So if you're doing this, you could definitely do that.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
All right. Shall we talk about the neck? It is spooky season after all.
It is, yes.
All right.
So picking up your provisional cast on.
I do believe we did a video on that.
We do.
She says, crossing her fingers.
I do believe we do have a video. Yes.
We filmed all these videos in the summer, and there has been a bit of a reckoning this fall where we're like, I thought we filmed that. Nope. Okay. Whoops.
That's all
this
good.
one we did too.
No, we did. You did quite a few videos. Yeah.
We tried to do them as the sweater was being knit to mixed results. Okay, so we do have a video up about the picking up of the provisional cast on. It is gonna be okay. It's almost like it's like tinking, like undoing a row 1 stitch at a time and putting it back on the needle. There is one thing that I don't remember. I'm sure I did mention it in the video, but just to mention it again. Provisional cast on is a bit weird in the sense that you say you need 20 stitches.
Right.
You do a provisional cast on for 20 stitches, you knit all your piece, you go back to pick it up. Without paying attention, if you just put all those loops back on the needle, you're gonna be like, wait a second, I only have 19 stitches.
Okay.
And that's because like the provisional does a weird thing where it's almost like an extra wrap of the yarn over the needle counts as like the 20th stitch. So if you're confused because you're missing 1 stitch, and I'm pretty sure we had comments about that in one of the previous weeks when someone went ahead.
You did mention it in the video, how to kind of fix that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if you're paying really close attention, it'll be like the very first stitch that you did, essentially. So you're going to start from one direction and sort of unzip back, and when you get to that last one, if you catch it at the moment, you'll see that the yarn is sort of wrapped around the needle, but it's just a wrap. It's not an actual stitch. Just keep it there, and if you miss it, then just wrap the stitch around the needle, and you'll be fine.
It sounds like it's pretty easy to fix if you miss it. If you do forget and miss it, can you easily just like add a new stitch?
Oh heck yeah! Don't even bother. I mean, for this particular thing, we're gonna pick up those stitches and like immediately start decreasing towards the neck. So, like, well done. You've decreased an extra stitch already. Okay. So maybe just.
So it's not a big deal if you drop one or you.
No. Yeah. It would be frustrating if, for instance, you were doing one of those like infinity scarves where you graft the 2 ends together and one side has 19 and the other one has 20. At that point, just wrap the yarn around the needle and added in for the graft.
Right.
Yeah.
So make sure you catch all of the live ones,
Yes.
but that last one, it's okay if you miss it.
Yeah. And basically what we're doing is when we cast on, we have, I guess stitches have like two ends of loops. So we knit in this one, and now we're going back to pick up this one. It's still live though, so you still have to be careful with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't want it to unravel on you. That would be terrible.
That would be awful.
And then, so the pattern as written has you do some sort of rapid decreasing that takes you in to still a fairly wide necked sweater, and then you throw some ribbing on. But I remember in the previous weeks, people were asking about ideas on how we might hack that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so you can do more decreases than what it tells you to do if you want it to be a more of a shirt like I'm wearing.
Yeah. Crew neck?
So I guess this is a crew neck.
I don't
or
know. Not the anti-boat neck. The sub neck? No, that's a turtleneck. Never mind. Well, that's a mock turtleneck.
Right.
Just picturing
yes.
movies from the 1980s.
Yeah. So you can do the decreases that it tells you to do, and then if you still want it to be a little bit smaller, you can do a few more decreases, right?
Yep. Or do some extra rows in the ribbing. That could also work.
You mentioned doing like a turtleneck, or like
I was thinking about it as a thought exercise. So Caitlin,
a thought exercise.
Yeah, Caitlin and I were talking about this earlier, and Caitlin had a great suggestion. Just see if anyone else has done a turtleneck before you do that.
Well, no, that's not what I meant.
Oh, okay.
That's not what I meant.
Like on Ravelry and that.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's a great idea. You could go on Ravelry and see what other people have done.
Yes.
Because people will write in their notes, I decreased to this number instead of the number called for, and then I did this many rows for a turtleneck. So people will write notes like that. You're not always going to find exactly what you're looking for, but it's helpful if you know exactly what you're trying to find.
Not having ever knit a turtleneck,
right?
I'm pretty sure you would just continue ribbing, and then this is absolutely crucial that you do a stretchy bind off.
Right.
And in this case, I actually would, if you were doing a turtleneck, I would do that Jenny surprisingly stretchy.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I guess what I meant by what I was saying about see what other people have done, I think I meant look at other patterns.
Oh.
Look at other patterns to kind of see what kind of what's the word? What kind of ratio of decreases, right? Because if you think about a turtleneck, if you ever look at a turtleneck to sew one or deconstruct one or like a ready-made one, you'll see it usually starts pretty high. Yeah. So you would want to, do some decreases to get to a certain point, and then do that ribbing, depending on how you wanted it to fit.
Yeah, and throw it on a lifeline to make sure that it'll still fit over your head. Yeah. Crucial. Some of the other ideas we were throwing around, I-cord, which I think we talked maybe a bit about.
Yeah. This week. Like a really the stretchy one?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So if you weren't going to decrease any further, it's still a fairly wide piece.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So if that fits over your neck, without having to stretch it out at all, then you do not need to do a stretchy I-cord. You could probably get away with a regular I-cord, and then it would just sort of, you wouldn't be pressing it against your head. It would just come on, and you want that stability to keep it from stretching over your shoulders. And the other thing that I had thought about was a rolled neck, which essentially would just be continuing to knit in stockinette and then bind off, and that natural inclination of stockinette to curl will give it a nice rolled neck. Okay. But again, I would be slightly concerned about it stretching. So
I have seen patterns where you knit a one row of garter.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And then a few more of stockinette.
Okay. And have it curl over the garter?
And then it kind of curls over the garter. I think I have seen something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you want to play around with necklines, there's definitely a lot of, you can look through Ravelry and kind of see what you might want to experiment with.
Exactly.
And put in a lifeline if you are going to, if you're trying something kooky and you want to.
If you're gonna go wild with it, I would pick up your provisional cast on, then maybe knit one plain row just to sort of as an establishing row, and throw in a lifeline that you don't get rid of until you finish doing your neck.
That's a great plan.
Because then you can do as much as you want and you're locked in place as a safe position, which is pretty sweet. Yeah. Well, and then for the bind off, it's one of those tricky situations wherein, like I said, you don't want too much stretch, but you also do want to make sure it fits over your head, and I'm pretty sure this barely fits over my head. What I would do is I would do your bind off, but don't cut the yarn, and then make sure it fits over your head, and then if it doesn't, then you can go back and redo it.
Right. Yeah, because sometimes bind offs can turn out to be tighter than you thought.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Different kinds of bind offs.
I think we've all done the whole. No, gotta take my glasses off. No.
Oh my God. I knit a cowl. Like one of the first things I knit was like a cowl in the round. Like the first thing I knit in the round was a cowl. And I don't know what I did with the bind off, but it was so tight.
Yep. Yeah. I have a hat that I can't wear.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
We all have stories like that. So that there is the neck. And I think the last thing we wanted to talk about was blocking. Like how to finish your sweater. So like weaving in your ends is a good thing to do. I would do that before you wet block, but I wouldn't cut it. So I would weave in your ends. I like to do something called the duplicate stitch method, which sort of is invisibly weaving in your ends. But whatever method works for you. Stuff going on in the background. Very compelling. And then don't trim yet. Wash your piece first because the threads will move around a little bit. And then you can trim your ends. And we have a blocking video. That was one of the first things we ever did.
So it kind of talks about, you know, the steps that are involved.
To wet block,
And we also have, let me just see here. We have a few like blocking kind of notions that people might be interested in.
While you pull that up, I'm going to talk a little bit about why wet blocking is so important for this pattern. And it's specifically because this pattern is lace. There's a large lace portion of the yoke. And generally speaking, most people get a little disappointed when they finish knitting a lace piece and it doesn't look like it does in the pictures. And that's because lace traditionally needs a good soak and then often needs the bejesus pinned out of it. Not so much for this one, but if you're doing a big lace shawl or something, you need to stretch that lace out to really maximize that negative space in those lace holes.
And by stretch, we don't mean like stretch. We just mean like you're washing and you're squeezing the water out, and then when you lay it out to dry, just the relaxing of the wet fibers will be enough to kind of like, you know, open up that lace.
And you can gently massage with your hands.
So we have a couple of cool things so Coco Knits has lots of like blocking tools like T-pins and wires and stuff like that to kind of like when you lay out your piece for blocking, pinning different parts of it on a blocking mat is super helpful. So we've got a Coco Knits kit and it comes with all of that stuff. And then we also have this really cool thing called a sweater pop-up dryer. And so the way I would describe it, because I can't really show you a picture, the way I would describe it is it's kind of, you know, those laundry baskets that you can like collapse on itself. It's like it's got a wire and it collapses like that. So this one opens up, and when you sit it on a table, it looks like a Pringle potato chip. And it's mesh. Okay. So it sits on your table, and you can lay your sweater over it. And so air is getting underneath it and all the way around it, and it really helps it to dry more quickly. It's super cool. So that's something called a sweater pop-up dryer, and that's by Coco Knits. So you'll find stuff like that for blocking on our website.
I don't think I pinned this one out. So normally for a shawl, I would like get that extra stretch, as Caitlin, the delicate stretch,
Yeah.
not the aggressive. And then I would use some T-pins to hold it in place. I don't think I did for this one. I think I just manually stretched it with my hands just to help encourage the lace to pop more and then let it air dry. Because it's a little bit weird to try and block. You don't want to aggressively block just the yoke and then have the rest of the sweater squish
You don't
back in.
need pins for a sweater usually. I have seen wires used.
Yes.
If you want your sweater to be really straight, you can put your blocking wires in there to kind of hold everything straight without having those little what are they called? When you put a pin in and you get these little points.
It's like almost like a web.
Yeah, so if you put a lot of pins in your knitting, it can kind of create like a weird shape. So the wires are used to kind of keep everything straight.
Yeah, because as the piece dries, it might suck in just a little bit and do that kind of webby shape. And then I guess, so you can totally wet block with just water, but if you want to give your sweater a wash while you're doing it, Eucalan or soak. I have whatever's on hand, which is at the moment soak in my apartment. Just a small amount, like half a teaspoon, not even. And then let this soak. And then it doesn't really smell too strongly after it's all been air dried. But the nice part is that you can wash it without having to like wring the pieces, and you don't have to rinse it out. So if your sweater is not out of superwash, like this is not superwash, then you are less likely to accidentally felt while you are washing.
And the scent, soak and Eucalan don't have super strong scents. They kind of fade away.
They dissipate after.
They're not chemical-y or anything.
So, and they're both Canadian.
Yeah.
Okay, so that I think is it on blocking.
I think that's it. Let me just double check that there aren't more questions. While we're waiting to see if anyone has any questions, I actually, when I finished knitting a lace sweater that I really, really wanted to wear that day, I had borrowed a steam cleaner from my mom for something, and I thought, I wonder if I can just steam the lace, because the body was fine. It's just the lace I wanted to kind of straighten out, and so that's all I did. I just put it on. I don't even think I put it on a hanger. I think I just lay it on the table, and I just kind of like gave it a little steam, and just gently kind of like pulled at the fibers, and it worked really well. So if you're super, super anxious to wear it out on the town, or
if you, I mean,
you can totally do that.
I'm pretty sure that there's a ginormous cultural mainstay knitting festival happening this weekend. So if you're finishing this sweater so you can wear it to Rhinebeck, then that is totally something you could do. Steam it instead of like, hanging it out the window while you're driving down to New York.
There's nothing like having to block something like the day before you need it.
It's a tradition.
It takes so long to dry for like a sweater to dry, but something like this is nice and light. I feel like this would probably block really quickly because it's like
It's also because it's not superwash. Superwash holds water for longer, but but steaming is definitely, it won't be like you won't have as long a result. Like I find that it's not quite as effective as like a full wet block, but it is 100% a great idea, especially if you need to wear it out the door immediately.
This was just like one of those clothing steamers, so it had like a really gentle brush on it, and I didn't like press on it. I just kind of like steamed over it.
It's like you're going, but more effective.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, there's no more questions.
I think that's,
so I feel like our babies are ready to fly.
Laura, you knit the needles or the sleeves you can knit on. We talked about magic loop earlier, or you could knit it on a circular needle or double pointed.
Yep.
And so most of the sleeve is going to be knit on the larger needle, so 6mm.
Yep.
And then the ribbing again will go down to the smaller needle.
Right. And I'm not sure. Maybe she meant small needles or small circumference.
Yeah. So magic loop or DPNs depending on your size, you might get away with a 16-inch needle, but
Yeah.
yeah.
But yes, the larger gauge of needle
Yes.
is what you're going to knit it with.
Exactly.
Yes, circumference. Okay. Yeah, you could, so if you were knitting a sleeve, you could use the 12.
Yeah.
If you have, because you have, I think Laura has a kit.
Oh yeah, if you've got the 12, then you
might
could do
have
12-inch.
that size.
Yep, or 16. Usually usually my circumference up here, I can definitely fit on a 16. And then if I'm tapering, at some point, I have to switch to double pointed
Yeah.
because you can't fit those stitches around and comfortably knit. But your knitting will tell you when it needs to switch because you just won't be able to do it anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or magic loop.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
or magic
I can't remember if we have a video on doing magic loop.
I think so, maybe for socks.
Possibly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if we did.
Yeah.
So, alrighty. Well, thank you everybody for joining us for this autumnal knit along. It's spooky. Well, there's pumpkins here. Can I show them?
Yeah, totally. I put out my fabric pumpkins for Thanksgiving.
They're super
This was
cute.
my little tablescape.
Yeah. Which I destroyed, but that's fine. We'll put it back there.
Yeah.
So we hope you have a lovely fall. Please keep sending us pictures. Tag us on Instagram, Fabricationers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fabricationer.
Fabrication.
And Fabrications Ott.
yes.
Like OTT
Yeah,
on
we wanna-
Instagram.
Yeah, we want to see what you're doing.
Yeah, and if you're not already, I think I know these people are in the Fabrications social group, but we have a Facebook Fabrications social group, SEWCIAL social, and people often post pictures of their works in progress.
Yes,
so.
or ask questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's what we're here for. And we'll see you in the new year
Yeah.
for a knit along as of yet not decided.
Oh.
Who knows what it'll be? It's very exciting.
Yeah.
We should
okay.
probably decide it soon so we can start working on a sample.
Yeah. Okay, bye everybody. Thanks for
Bye.
watching.